lights grow. Away from the noise we stand apart, guarding truth with a questioning heart. I be, just let it flow. Your mind wants to know. Let your brain begin to grow. In this bunker, we take our stand against the world with chains in hand. Here free thought is our shield and guide, a safe refuge when the truth's denied. Far from dogma, we seek what's real. Where dissent is the freedom we feel. I be, just let it flow. Your mind wants to know. Let your brain begin to grow.
Welcome to this deep dive. We're diving into some research that's raising eyebrows, claiming some political systems, and get this, operate more like organized crime than we realize. Now, before anyone starts looking for conspiracy theories, we're not going full tinfoil hat here. We're going to dissect the arguments, analyze some real-world examples, and let you decide if this mafia model, as it's called, holds any water.
Okay.
And to help us navigate these murky waters, I'm joined by, well, you guessed it, our expert in global politics.
It's definitely a provocative comparison to make.
Yeah.
So where do we even start with something this bold?
Right. Well, the argument hinges on this. It's not that every politician is a criminal, okay?
No.
But the systems they work within, well, they often encourage behaviors that kind of look a lot like, well, organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about it. Staying in power, maintaining control, influencing things.
Mm-hmm.
It can get pretty messy, whether you're talking about a government or, well, let's face it, a mafia.
Right, right. It's all about that power, that control.
Exactly.
And sometimes the lines can get a little blurry.
So, okay, what are these parallels exactly? Give us the rundown.
Yeah.
Lay it on us.
So the analysis highlights 4 main points.
Okay.
The first one is, and this is a big one, corruption.
Okay.
And we're not just talking about a few bad apples here. This research suggests that in some systems, corruption it's like a feature, not a bug. It's baked in. It's all about keeping control, enriching those in power, and, let's be honest, silencing anyone who disagrees.
And that sounds, well, eerily familiar to how some less-than-legal organizations might operate.
Exactly.
Right. It's like a playbook.
Mm-hmm. And this is where the second parallel kicks in, mutual protection. Just like, the mafia protecting its own, this research suggests that politicians in these systems, they're in it together. Scandals get swept under the rug, favors are exchanged. It's all very...
You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Exactly.
And that whole culture, I mean, it's got to be corrosive, right?
It's incredibly damaging. I mean, when those in power are basically above the law, people lose faith.
Right. It's like, why bother?
Yeah. It creates this breeding ground for cynicism and distrust.
Absolutely. And when people stop trusting the system, well, that's when things can really go sideways.
Exactly. And it creates this vacuum that can be easily exploited, which leads us to that third parallel, controlling the narrative. Just like, a certain organization we've been talking about, some political systems use their influence to, shall we say, manage the message. It's about controlling what people see, what they hear.
So we're talking propaganda, spin, that kind of thing.
It can be, but it's often much more subtle than that.
Oh.
Yeah, it's strategic funding, promoting certain stories, and kind of quietly sidelining anything that doesn't fit the narrative. It's all very calculated.
So it's like pulling strings behind the scenes.
Precisely. Controlling the game without ever getting your hands dirty. And that brings us to, let's be honest, the most unsettling parallel of them all. Silencing dissent.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, anyone who rocks the boat, criticizes the wrong people, or blows the whistle, well, they often find themselves facing some pretty serious consequences.
Consequences? Like what?
We're talking character assassination, legal troubles, or even worse, depending on the system. It creates a climate of fear.
So basically, don't speak up if you know what's good for you.
It's a chilling thought, but that's the reality in some parts of the world.
Okay, so we got these parallels, right? Corruption, mutual protection, controlling the narrative, silencing dissent. But are these just theories? Are there real-world examples that actually support this mafia model?
Oh, there are examples, plenty of them. And that's the make things get really interesting.
Okay, well, I am intrigued, but I guess we'll have to wait for the next part to dive into those examples. Get ready to pack your bags, because we're about to take a trip around the world
Okay.
to see how these parallels actually play out in the real world.
All right.
And we're starting in Spain
Okay.
with not one, but two major corruption scandals.
Oh.
The Girdle case and the ERE scandal.
Okay.
Now, I'll be honest, these names, they didn't really mean much to me either before I dove into this research.
Yeah.
But to put it simply, the Girdle case, it uncovered a whole web of bribes
Wow.
for government contracts, and it implicated members of the People's Party.
Okay.
But on the other side of the aisle, you've got the ERE scandal, and this one involved public funds meant for unemployment benefits
Okay.
being diverted to, well, let's just say political cronies.
Oh,
And this time, within the Socialist Party.
really?
So you've got both major political factions caught up in these schemes,
Wow.
which really suggests that this isn't just a few bad apples, you know?
Yeah, it seems more systemic.
Exactly.
Like than just a couple of people.
It's a systemic issue.
Right.
And it really makes you think about that old saying, power corrupts.
Yeah,
And absolute power corrupts absolutely.
that's true.
But let's move on from Spain
Okay.
to Brazil,
Right.
because the scale of corruption uncovered in Operation Car Wash
Yeah.
is almost unimaginable.
Really?
Operation Car Wash, you might remember, it centered around Petrobras, the state-owned oil giant.
Right.
But what started as an investigation into money laundering quickly became something way bigger.
Oh, how so?
It exposed this massive network of kickbacks, inflated contracts, and political bribery. We're talking billions.
Wow.
Billions of dollars siphoned away.
And who was implicated in that?
Well, it led to the downfall of some really high-ranking politicians,
Okay.
including a former president
Wow.
who used slush funds to buy a private jet.
A private jet.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the audacity is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's brazen.
It is.
Wow.
It really shows you how entrenched corruption can become when those in power believe they are untouchable.
Right. They think they can get away with it.
Exactly.
Because they have for so long.
Okay, now let's hop over to Italy,
Okay.
where the name Silvio Berlusconi
Yeah.
is practically synonymous with political scandal.
Right.
I mean, his legal battles, the allegations of corruption, it's almost legendary.
What kind of allegations are we talking about?
Oh, everything from tax fraud to abuse of office.
Wow.
And while he's always maintained his innocence,
Mm-hmm.
his case really highlights how political power can be used to, let's say, navigate the legal system,
Right. To work the system.
delaying trials for years
Yes.
and potentially evading accountability altogether.
It makes you wonder if there's a different set of rules for the powerful
It really does.
than there is for everyone else.
And sadly, this pattern is not just limited to Europe.
Right.
Our last stop takes us to Turkey
Yeah.
under President Erdogan.
Okay.
Since coming to power, he's really consolidated his grip on the country's institutions.
Okay.
And we've seen this really disturbing trend of journalists, academics, political opponents, anyone who speaks out
Yeah.
facing consequences.
What kind of consequences?
Well, we're talking arrests on flimsy charges, shutting down media outlets that are critical of the government. It's created this climate of fear.
So you can't criticize the government,
Basically,
or you'll face the consequences.
it's a very, very different system than what we're used to.
Yeah, freedom of the press is not really a thing there,
Right.
it sounds like.
So from rigged contracts in Spain to slush funds in Brazil, from political maneuvering in Italy to silencing dissent in Turkey, we see a pattern emerging here, a pattern that aligns with this mafia model our source material lays out.
Right, it's all about power and control.
Exactly.
And how those in power wield it.
And what's really unsettling is that these are just a few examples.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how widespread these problems truly are.
It's a scary thought
It is.
that it could be happening in a lot more places.
It makes you wonder if there's a different way.
Right, like what if we could reimagine the whole system?
Exactly. What if we could rethink the very structure of political systems?
Yeah, start from scratch almost.
What if there's a way to create a system that's truly for the people, by the people?
It's a nice thought.
It is a nice thought, and that's actually something that our researchers delve into a little bit in this analysis, so let's talk about that. It's a pretty radical idea, right? A world without politicians.
Sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
But the researchers behind this analysis, they're actually serious about it.
Really?
Yeah, they say by taking politicians out of the picture, you remove the incentives, the structures that allow this mafia-like behavior to take root in the first place.
So how would that even work?
Right, it's like, okay, that's a bold statement, but what's the alternative? Well, they actually offer a framework for what they call a governance model.
A governance model instead of a political system.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And this model is built on some pretty wild ideas.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
One of the core pillars is this idea of direct democracy, but on steroids, powered by technology.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine, instead of electing someone to make decisions for you, you're voting on key issues directly through a secure online platform.
So it's like everyone gets a direct say.
Exactly. Need a new bridge? Put it to a vote. School funding. Let the people decide.
Ambitious. But, running a country is a bit more complicated than just clicking a button.
You're not wrong. And they realize that. That's where the second pillar comes in. Artificial intelligence.
AI. Okay, now we're really getting futuristic.
I know, right? But hold on. Before you picture robots running the world, we're talking about AI as a tool here.
Okay.
The idea is to leverage AI's ability to analyze tons of data, identify patterns, and optimize systems to make governing more efficient, more objective.
So instead of relying on a politician who might be influenced by, well, all sorts of things, we have algorithms crunching the numbers and giving us the most logical solution.
Precisely. Less bias, more data-driven decisions.
That sounds great in theory, but who controls the algorithms? How do we know they're not just reflecting someone else's bias?
You've hit on a crucial point, and the researchers actually emphasize that any use of AI in governance would have to be completely transparent. Open source algorithms, clear decision-making processes, constant oversight to make sure it serves the people.
Transparency and accountability. That's key, no matter who or what is in charge.
Absolutely.
But if you don't have elected officials, who's doing the overseeing? They mentioned something about councils of experts.
Right. Instead of career politicians, they envision independent councils made up of experts in all kinds of fields, economists, scientists, you name it,
Okay.
chosen for their knowledge and integrity, not their ability to win an election. Their job would be to provide oversight, make recommendations based on the data, and basically make sure society is functioning.
It's a fascinating idea, but could it actually work? That's the big question, right?
It is. And even the authors admit this is a huge shift from how things are done now. There would be challenges, of course.
Yeah.
But they argue that just imagining different models, questioning the systems we take for granted, it's essential if we want to deal with the problems facing, well, the entire world, really.
Yeah, but you think.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that power, whoever holds it, requires checks and balances, transparency, and a commitment to something bigger than individual gain. So there you have it, from the dirty dealings of political corruption to a future where AI might be drafting our laws. It's a lot to wrap your head around, right?
It certainly gives you a new perspective.
And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're not here to give you easy answers, but to equip you with the knowledge to ask the right questions, to think critically, and to imagine new possibilities.
Because who knows, maybe a world where politics is synonymous with progress isn't so far-fetched after all.
Maybe not. Thanks for going on this wild ride with us. Keep those questions coming, and until next time, keep diving deep.
Ideological bunker where free minds grow. Away from the noise we stand apart, guarding truth with a questioning heart. I be just let it